kindergartners. It's Mrs. Pryor here again. I wanted to read you another story. This time I picked one about a house. And I picked this one because, lately we've been spending a little more time at our house, not going to school and maybe not going to restaurants or to activity places, but also because our houses are very special to all of us. It's a place where probably you feel most comfortable and probably where all your special toys and things are and where your family lives with you. So anyway, the name of this story is called The Big Orange Splot. And before I get started, I have someone special here who wanted to read the story with us. So go ahead and say hi. It's Marvin. He came to join us for story time today, so I'm going to sit him right in my lap so he can join us, okay? All right, here we go. The Big Orange Splot by Daniel Pinkwater. Mr. Plumbean lived on a street where all the houses were the same. He liked it that way, and so did everybody else on Mr. Plumbean's street. "This is a neat street," they would say. But then one day, a seagull flew over Mr. Plumbean's house. He was carrying a can of bright orange paint. And he dropped the can right over Mr. Plumbean's house. It made a big orange splot right on Mr. Plumbean's house. "Oh, too bad," everybody said. "Mr. Plumbean will have to paint his house again." "I suppose I will," said Mr. Plumbean. But he didn't paint his house right away. He looked at the big orange splot for a long time, and then he went about his business. The neighbors got tired of seeing the big orange splot. Someone said, "Mr. Plumbean, we wish you'd get around to painting your house." "Okay," said Mr. Plumbean. He got some blue paint and some white paint, and that night he got busy. He painted at night because it was cooler. And when the paint was gone and the roof was blue, the walls were white, and the big orange spot was still there. And then he got some more paint. He got red paint, yellow paint, green paint, and purple paint. And in the morning, the other people on the street came out of their houses. Their houses were all the same, but Mr. Plumbean's house was like a rainbow. It was like a jungle. It was like an explosion. There was the big orange splot, and there were little orange splots. There were stripes, pictures of elephants, and lions, and steam shovels. And people said, "Plumbean has popped his cork, flipped his wig, blown his stack, and dropped his stopper." They went away muttering. That day, Mr. Plumbean brought carpenter's tools, and that night he built a tower on top of his roof, and he painted a clock on the tower. The next day the people said, "Plumbean has gushed his mush, lost his marbles, slipped his hawser." They decided to pretend not to notice. That very night, Mr. Plumbean got a truck full of green things. He planted palm trees, baobabs, thorn bushes, onions, and frangipani. And in the morning, he bought a hammock and an alligator. And when the other people came out of their houses, they saw Mr. Plumbean swinging in a hammock between two palm trees. They saw an alligator lying in the grass. Mr. Plumbean was drinking lemonade. "Plumbean has gone too far. This used to be a neat street." "Plumbean, what have you done to your house?" the people shouted. "My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams," Mr. Plumbean said. Well, the people went away. They asked the man who lived next door to Mr. Plumbean to go and have a talk with him. "Tell him that we all liked it here the way it was before he changed his house. Tell him that the house has to be the same as ours, or we won't have a neat street." The man went to see Mr. Plumbean that evening. They sat under the palm trees drinking lemonade and talking all night long. Even the alligator asleep. Early the next morning, the man went out to get lumber and rope and nails and paint. And when the people came out of their houses, they saw a red and yellow ship next door to the house of Mr. Plumbing. "What have you done to your house?" they shouted at the man. "My house is me and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams," said the man, who had always loved ships. "He's just like Plumbean," the people shouted. "He's got bees in his bonnet, bats in his belfry, knots in his noodle." And those are all ways to say that he's gone crazy. Then one by one, they all went to see Mr. Plumbean late at night. They would sit under the palm tree drinking lemonade and talking about their dreams. And whenever anybody visited Mr. Plumbean's house, the very next day, that person would set about changing their own house to fit their dreams. Whenever a stranger came to the street of Mr. Plumbean and his neighbors, the stranger would say, "This is not a neat street." And then all the people would say, "Our street is us, and we are it. Our street is where we like to be, and it looks like all our dreams." The end. Boys and girls, thanks for listening to another story. And I thought if you're looking for something to do, I have a little art project for you. I sat and thought about what I would love my house to look like if it were to be a house that showed all my dreams. And you already know how much I love horses. They're one of my favorite animals. And so I decided if I could paint my house any way I wanted, I would paint it to make it look like a barn where horses could live. So if you're thinking for an art project to do, here's one you could do. Think about a house that has all your favorite things painted on it and make it look like all your dreams. And if you'd like, you could take a picture of it and send it to me, or even send it in the mail. All right, have fun and happy reading.